The Wheel and the Butterfly. Chapter 17. Dan vs. Friendship is Magic. Pinkie sat cross-legged on her side of Fort Dan Pie, decked out in a white button-up shirt, black vest, cut-off jean shorts, rainbow-colored leg warmers, and a random assortment of bracelets. She still had been unable to turn on her computer or phone. The two devices were set in front of her, in her hands. She held her compact mirror. Twilight had gathered her other friends, hoping she could finally coax a response from the devices, and also hoping the devices would reveal clues as to what happened on that fateful day when Pinkie Pie got sent to another world.
Twilight, I'm not really sure this is a good idea,
Applejack said.
Trust me,
Twilight insisted.
After examining the devices in great detail...
Too great if you ask me,
Spike commented. Twilight quickly fixed the baby dragon with a stare, then continued.
I realized what was missing was energy.
Yeah, but shooting at the mechanical doohickeys?
Applejack countered with a cocked eyebrow.
None of that sounds right, or safe even. I trust you, Twilight,
Pinkie responded with a smile.
Me too,
Rainbow Dash chimed in enthusiastically.
If anyone can figure this out, it's Princess Egghead,
she added with a grin. Rarity also voiced her concerns.
Twilight, are you really sure this won't hurt the devices?
Fluttershy said nothing and stood a bit back from the group, not comfortable with the idea of firing energy across dimensions.
Well, I determined both devices have many similarities, and a big similarity between them is how they're powered. Both contain a plastic rectangular piece that takes up a sizable fraction of the device's total size and mass.
Pinkie's smile dropped and her eyes went wide, staring off into space. She's doing it again!
By examining these rectangular pieces, I determined that inside the plastic, they're both an advanced type of battery that stores power which supplies all the device's myriad functions, both audio, visual, and even allowing the devices to receive inputs via different stimuli.
Why?
Another commonality between the pieces is both of them currently have no energy. Clearly, these devices can't function without energy, so by giving them a jolt directed towards the batteries...
Make it stop!
I think that should store enough energy that...
Twilight had stopped talking. Finally!
Pinkie?
Rainbow Dash said with a forehoof, trying to get her friend's attention. Pinkie looked back at the mirror and noticed her friends were no longer looking at her but a space a few feet above her. She followed their eyes until she locked her own against Dan's. Pinkie quickly closed the mirror and attempted to hide it behind her back. Hi, Dan, Pinkie said nervously. Didn't hear you come in or left the ceiling off the fort. Dan's eyes narrowed and he motioned to the item behind her back.
Is that how you talk to your pony friends back home?
Pinkie uttered nervously as she looked from side to side. Think of something convincing to say. Yeah, Pinkie admitted. Dang it! Dan dramatically extended his hand.
Give them to me,
he demanded,
so that I may pass judgment on them.
Pinkie sighed heavily and handed over the closed compact mirror. Well, it was bound to happen eventually. Still, it would have been nice for it to be any situation but this. Or Fluttershy. Dan opened the mirror and looked over his 6 victims. His victims warily eyed him back, not sure what to expect. Dan wasted no time.
2 purple.
Twilight furrowed her brow.
2 kindergarten art project.
Hey!
Rainbow Dash protested.
2 prissy.
Rarity made it quiet. Humph! And lifted her muzzle into the air in disapproval.
A cowboy pony? Seriously?
Now listen here, partner,
Applejack began. Dan interrupted her.
I don't even know what the heck that's supposed to be,
Dan said, pointing at Spike.
Oh man,
Spike said as he hung his head. Dan spotted the quivering mass of yellow and pink, Fluttershy desperately trying to make herself as small as possible.
2.
Fluttershy looked up with big, scared eyes, fearing the worst.
2.
Dan locked eyes with her, and his mouth hung open as his pupils went wide.
Perfect,
he finished. Fluttershy's look of terror slowly shifted to a soft smile. Every pony else's offended look shifted toward surprise, Pinkie's as well.
Well, Dan,
Twilight began.
This has been interesting, but if you'll excuse us, we have science to do, and...
Dan looked at Pinkie.
Having trouble?
He asked as he motioned out towards the phone and computer. Twilight thinks if she can fire energy at them, we can finally turn them on, Pinkie explained. Dan looked back at the purple alicorn in surprise.
You're going to shoot lightning at them?
Well, just a little,
Twilight admitted sheepishly.
You're not very bright, are you, Twilight?
Dan said flatly. Every pony/one else put on shocked expressions. Twilight had been called many things in her life, but having her intelligence called into question had never happened to her before. Dan pointed at Pinky's pink laptop bag and motioned with his head for his roommate to fetch it for him. Pinky wordlessly obeyed and held the bag up for him. Dan held the mirror in one hand and rummaged through the bag with the other, Pinky continuing to hold the bag up for him. He pulled out a bunch of noisemakers, balloons, and streamers.
More party supplies?
Pinky managed a weak smile. Those are my emergency party supplies. Dan raised an eyebrow.
I thought those were in your pockets.
These are my backup emergency party supplies, Pinky corrected. Dan sighed and dug deeper, fishing out a few black cords attached to small rectangular objects with metal prongs sticking out. He held the cords up for the ponies and dragon on the other side of the mirror to see.
Did you think about plugging them in?
Oops, Pinky muttered. I forgot about those. Twilight flushed with embarrassment and put on a nervous grin.
Of course Dan wouldn't know how to use the devices. They're from his world.
Besides,
Dan continued,
if you needed to give them power, why wouldn't you just take the batteries out first and shoot those?
Dan asked. Twilight smacked a hoof against her face as Rainbow Dash snickered to herself. Dan motioned for Pinky to hand him the two devices. Pinky set the bag down and obediently complied, taking the mirror as Dan handed it to her. Dan replaced the roof of the fort and walked off. Sorry, Twilight, I completely forgot those were in there, Pinky said apologetically.
It's okay, Pinky. It looks like it worked out anyways. Besides,
Twilight said, still with an embarrassed smile.
this is probably safer.
Dan crawled into the fort, holding the computer, a black cord attached to it.
Your phone is charging,
He explained. He handed the computer to Pinky, who handed him back the mirror. Eagerly, Pinky opened the laptop and pushed the power button.
Hey, Dan.
Twilight called out. Dan looked down in the mirror.
Thank you.
Twilight said earnestly. Dan merely shrugged. Pinky made an excited yee before her face shifted to a more neutral look. Oh, a password,
A password?
Twilight asked.
let us see.
Dan held a finger up and waved it back and forth.
Not now, Purple Horse, the people are working.
He said with a mischievous grin. Twilight let out an exasperated sigh.
How does Pinky put up with this guy?
Spike seemed to be on the same wavelength.
Can you believe this guy?
He asked no one in particular. Pinky looked at her screen, a pink cloud with brown rain falling down from it. Next to the picture read, Chaos. Pinky thought for a moment and began typing.
Ugh.
Dan uttered, dragging his hand over half his face.
You type like you've only had fingers for a few weeks.
Dan said irritably. I've only had fingers for a few weeks, Pinky countered with narrowed eyes.
Alright, here.
Dan set down the mirror on the mattress.
Hey!
Twilight said, the view on the mirror shifting from Dan to a random assortment of pillows. Dan sat down next to Pinky.
Whisper to me what you were failing to type.
Pinky whispered into Dan's ear, and he slowly typed Chocolate Rain. He hit enter, and the computer screen shifted to a picture of a couple of daisies against a blue background. Dan picked up the mirror and faced it towards the screen.
See, two purple? The people got it covered.
Twilight ignored the comment, simply happy for their progress.
Great, now let's try to find some clues.
Pinky stroked her chin, thinking about the picture and the password. Clues, eh? Well... Dan placed a hand on his roommate's face and pushed her out of the way.
Clues schmooze, let's fire up the internet on this baby.
Dan said, grinning, putting down the mirror and rubbing his palms together.
Oh, good thinking, Dan. I could never quite figure that out when I went to a world with humans.
Twilight said, excitedly.
Internest?
Applejack asked.
No, internet. Humans have collected all their knowledge onto the internet and they use computers to access it. Maybe there's some information we can find out to help Pinky.
Twilight said in a very enthusiastic tone.
Oh, there's information, alright.
Dan said, moving his finger on the touchpad and clicking a few things. Pinky picked herself up and looked at the screen. Another password? Dan sighed.
Pinky, you're still going to end up a statistic here if I have to explain every little thing to you.
Pinky's expression changed to a pout.
Our landlord has the Wi-Fi password. Wait here, I'll...
Pinky sat up resolutely, accidentally nudging Dan's makeshift coffee table that served as part of the fort wall on the way up. The two paused as the pillow walls around them vibrated slightly before settling. Pinky looked at Dan, determination having set root on her face. No, Dan, I'll get it, Pinky said, motioning to herself with her thumb. You're right. If I can't figure out any of this on my own, I'll never get anywhere. Pinky's pupils dilated, and then quickly retracted into pinprick-sized dots. And then I'll end up in Tijuana naked in a bathtub of ice with a missing kidney.
Hey!
Twilight called out.
Just what have you been teaching her about your world anyhow?
She demanded. Dan placed a hand on his roommate's shoulder.
Very good, my young Padawan. You're coming along nicely.
Aren't I? Pinky said, flashing a toothy smile. She quickly crawled out from under the fort. Dan grinned evilly and picked up the mirror, once again looking over his victims. The ponies looked back, expressions ranging from concerned, irritated, and one surprisingly hopeful.
Oh dear.
Twilight uttered.
It's very interesting to examine another culture that developed in the absence of widespread magic.
Twilight said.
Uh-huh.
Dan replied in a bored tone.
Not to mention, a third of the population here flies. It's easy to see why humans would construct many of the devices they have. We've all had so much to overcome.
Uh-huh.
Humans can't control the weather, can they? It's simply remarkable that you've all become the dominant species on your planet. We ponies have many natural advantages, so much in fact that many of the species in Equestria depend on us for their very survival.
Uh-huh.
Oh, but your technology is simply amazing. Even without magic, your species has constructed such marvels. Who would have thought that combining aluminum, silicon, iron, nickel, gold...
Nerd!
Dan yelled at the mirror.
Oh, wait, what?
Twilight asked, her train of thought thoroughly derailed.
Hey, Twilight!
Rainbow Dash called from the side.
Tag up!
Tag up?
Twilight responded in a confused tone.
Yeah,
Rainbow Dash said with a determined grin, holding a hoof out.
let me handle this jerk. I've got a bone to pick with him.
Dan chuckled.
Let her in the ring, Sparkler. I can use a good laugh.
He said as he clenched a fist to crack his knuckles. Twilight skeptically looked back and forth between Dan and Rainbow Dash, then tapped to the blue Pegasus hoof.
I hope you know what you're doing.
Rainbow Dash positioned herself in front of the mirror.
Alright, Dan, let's make one thing perfectly clear. If you hurt Pinky in any way, we'll turn your world into a world of hurt.
Dan stifled a yawn.
Nice one. Though I think you're someone...
Pony!
Rainbow Dash corrected.
Someone who would benefit from a thesaurus. Besides, it's not like you can do anything through that mirror.
Dan added smugly.
Twilight can fire lightning through it.
Dash responded in a smugger tone. Dan pondered this new thought.
Touché. Not that it matters, of course.
Dan closed his eyes and motioned a hand towards himself.
I've been a perfect gentleman to the lady.
Like the time you burned her photo album in front of her?
Dash countered. Dan winced. He wasn't aware Pinky had told her friends that much, but then again, they were her best friends.
I made her a new one.
He insisted as he flung out his free hand. Rainbow Dash smiled, Dan having walked right into her trap.
Yeah, I saw it. Did you practice it being that girly, or did it come naturally?
Dan smirked.
Tough talk for a walking nursery school art project.
Rainbow Dash frowned and narrowed her eyes somewhat.
Hey, I'm the awesomest looking pony in Equestria. Ask any pony.
Any pony between the ages of 3 and 11, you mean?
Dan said as his devilish smile widened. Rainbow Dash considered the average age of the members of her fan club for a second.
Well, that is...
Oh, come on, Skittles, you were doing so well.
Dan said, his smile continuing to widen. Rainbow Dash's face contorted to one of anger and confusion.
Alright, I may not know what Skittles are, but I know when some pony's being a jerk to me.
Why, I oughta...
What you two talking about? Pinky asked as she crawled back into the fort.
I was just telling your friend that she's a real work of art.
Dan answered, smile still plastered on his face. A frustrated sounding
Gah!
escaped from Rainbow Dash. Aw, Pinky began as she looked at the mirror. I told you he could be sweet.
Sweet is not the word I'd use.
Ooh, how about lovable or adorable, charming, delightful?
See, art project? Thesaurus.
Dan said, motioning towards Pinky with his free hand. Yeah, he even has a cute nickname for you and everything, Pinky observed. Rainbow Dash held her hooves up in an expression of wanting to strangle someone as she made angry gurgling sounds.
Tag up, partner.
Applejack called from the side, holding an orange hoof out. Rainbow Dash sighed, hung her head, and gave Applejack's hoof a tap. Applejack stared intently into the abyss. The abyss in this case being Dan, who was indeed staring back. The two continued their epic stare down. Staring intensifies. Staring intensifies. Staring intensifies. Blink.
Ha!
Dan said triumphantly.
5 times in a row.
Applejack scrunched her face to the side as she frowned.
Best 6 out of 11.
I'm sorry, I wasn't aware you were a sadomasochist.
Dan responded. Applejack narrowed her eyes.
And just what in tarnation makes you think I enjoy pain?
Dan chuckled as his eyes widened in surprise slightly.
Cowboy horse knows her vocab. Still, you must be enjoying this savage beating I'm giving you. You keep coming back for more.
Applejack made a small
Y'all.
sigh, sighed, and looked to her side.
Tag up.
Me? Why me?
Rarity asked as Applejack walked out of sight of the mirror.
'Cause it's your turn.
Applejack said simply, using her head to push the white unicorn into view of the mirror.
But, well, just look at him. We have nothing in common.
Well, they wear clothes over there.
Applejack said.
Just talk about fashion or something.
Rarity made a disgusted sound as she remembered Dan's ensemble was little more than jeans and a t-shirt.
Yeah, Prissy, let's talk about how pointless it is to make clothes for horses.
Dan said.
Oh, it is on.
Pinky looked up from the computer.
Come on, guys, I'm sure you two will get along if you just give each other a chance.
She put on her best puppy dog face and a big smile.
Please.
Dan and Rarity both sighed out and...
Alright.
But then...
I can't believe that black rag you wear passes as fashion.
Rarity said.
At least it makes sense that we wear clothes. You all have hair-covered bodies and can control the weather. How can
Dan air-quoted with his free hand.
making clothes even be a real job over there?
Demanded Dan. Rarity turned her nose up.
Well, some ponies simply want to look nice. Why, a well-made suit, a dress, or a fashionable saddle can...
Whoa, 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 whoa! You hay-brained horses make saddles? Why?
Well, they're fashionable, of course.
No!
Dan declared, holding up a resolute index finger.
I'm putting my foot down on this one. You put a saddle on something you're going to ride. You all don't ride each other, do you?
Dan asked with a raised eyebrow.
What? No, don't be absurd.
Well, I ride them sometimes.
Spike said from the side. Rarity shushed him.
Shh, Spike, you're not helping.
Oops, sorry, Spike replied. And then...
What did you say about my hair?
Rarity demanded, her voice firing off into the highest of octaves. Dan leveled a finger at Rarity.
So you're telling me you didn't get it stuck in an egg beater?
I most certainly did not. Hair this magnificent takes time.
Maybe it would go faster if you tried the egg beater.
Suggested Dan, shrugging slightly and glancing to the side. Rarity glanced at the mirror with a puffy red face.
At least my hair doesn't look like it was sabotaged by an irate barber.
Dan frowned.
Hey, my hair was sabotaged by an irate barber.
Oh, well, I guess it looks tolerable if you consider that.
Rarity replied.
Dan,
Pinky interrupted.
you told me that happened ages ago.
Rarity chuckled to herself.
Pinky, you're not helping.
Dan said through clenched teeth.
Oops, sorry.
Pinky replied.
Wait, why am I helping you insult my friends?
Pinky asked, raising an eyebrow.
I'm not insulting her.
Dan insisted.
I'm offering constructive criticism on her horrible life choices and terrible hair.
Dan said informatively.
Quite.
Rarity responded.
Just like if I explained to Dan that his teeth are simply a ghastly shade of yellow.
Rarity said.
Hey!
Dan said angrily.
You could stand to brush more often.
Pinky offered.
Or at all.
Dan furrowed his brows angrily.
Well, Prissy's hair looks like she thinks springs are in fashion.
Dan said, angrily motioning to the white unicorn in the mirror. Rarity said, sticking her muzzle up in disapproval for about the dozenth time that day.
Rarity, your hair and tail does sort of look like purple springs.
Pinky said.
Just whose side are you on anyway?
Rarity demanded, her voice going shrill again. Pinky widened her eyes in a
Ooh, me?
expression as she pointed to herself.
Side? I'm not on anyone's side.
Ha!
Dan cried triumphantly.
You said anyone. You could have said any pony.
Yes, but she said not on anyone's side.
Rarity disputed. Pinky buried her head in both palms.
Trying to figure out this computer is frustrating enough, but these two are giving me a headache.
Tag up, please.
Rarity followed the voice to a yellow Pegasus holding out a forehoof. Rarity eyed Fluttershy with concern.
Are you sure? You don't have to speak to this ruffian.
Purple-springed prude.
Dan called out.
Why, you uncouth, uncivilized beast of a...
Fluttershy waved her hoof about, trying to regain Rarity's attention. Rarity breathed a calming sigh.
Oh, very well.
She tapped Fluttershy's hoof.
Don't let him get to you, Fluttershy.
Rarity whispered resolutely.
We're here to back you up if you need it.
He just needs to be shown a little kindness is all.
Fluttershy insisted.
Or like a muzzle.
Rarity muttered, walking away.
Hey, Shutterfly.
Dan said, his voice immediately mellowing out to a kinder tone. Fluttershy nodded slightly.
Fluttershy.
She corrected.
Oh, sorry.
Dan said.
Did Dan just apologize and mean it?
What's wrong, Dan?
Fluttershy began.
Having trouble making friends?
Dan pouted and looked to the side.
I don't need any friends.
Now, Dan.
Fluttershy continued.
I'm sure if you give every pony a chance, you'll have lots of new friends in no time.
No!
Dan insisted.
I don't want to be their friends. They're all too bright-looking and weird.
Dan.
Fluttershy said with a warm smile.
Now you know you look pretty strange to them as well.
Dan looked down at himself and waved his free hand in front of his eyes.
Yeah, I guess.
He admitted quietly.
And Pinky dresses in bright clothing, and you're still her friend, right?
Fluttershy said, hopefully. Pinky glanced up. Dan met her sky blue eyes with his green emerald ones.
Yeah, she's alright.
Dan offered weakly. Pinky beamed.
Oh my gosh!
Rainbow Dash said to her friends.
Are they actually getting along?
She exclaimed in disbelief.
It's gotta be a trap, y'all see.
Applejack said, her face displaying her suspicion.
I don't know, girls.
Twilight said.
Maybe Fluttershy has the right approach. She did single-hoofedly reform a chaos god, mostly.
Rarity interjected.
I give it 5 minutes before that barbarian is screaming at her.
But then...
I just think you need to open your heart more. Let more people inside.
Fluttershy said.
Right, so more people know my weaknesses.
Dan said in a sullen tone.
Well, yes, trusting people means letting them closer to you, but I think if you give more people a chance, you'll find the rewards outweigh the risks.
Fluttershy said kindly. Dan looked back at Fluttershy with concern.
Are you ever afraid you trust some people, ponies, too much?
Fluttershy looked nervously from side to side.
Well, sometimes.
Fluttershy admitted softly.
Do you want to talk about it?
Dan asked. And then...
I'm telling you, that's exactly how an abusive relationship works.
Dan countered.
Oh no.
Fluttershy insisted.
He's just a little rough around the edges. I know if I keep showing him kindness, he'll...
I don't want to hear it.
Dan asserted with wide eyes.
He's clearly taking advantage of your giving nature at this point. You need to put your foot down around this guy.
He said as he pointed an assertive finger at Fluttershy.
Oh, no, I can't do that.
Fluttershy said, taken aback.
If he feels threatened, he hides and stops eating. He requires a delicate...
Delicate? Listen to yourself. These are textbook strategies an abuser does to keep someone in a toxic relationship.
Dan explained.
If you don't stand up for yourself, you're going to be trapped in an abusive and unfulfilling relationship with this guy forever.
Well, you're probably right.
Fluttershy said meekly. Something to the side quickly caught her eye.
What? But we... Alright, bye, Dan. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Fluttershy said with a weak smile.
Yeah, me too.
Dan said as he mirrored the smile. Fluttershy walked off and was quickly replaced with a small white bunny who glared at Dan. Angel lifted a paw and flicked it under his chin a few times in Dan's direction. Dan shared a digit with the little bunny.
Right here, buddy.
He responded.
Angel, I saw that.
Angel looked to the side and began frantically pointing at Dan.
I don't care what he did.
Fluttershy angrily trotted back into view and grabbed Angel's tail in her mouth. She dragged him off to the side as Angel desperately tried to snatch at the stone floor.
I know a naughty little bunny who's spending the next few hours in his traveling case.
Fluttershy responded through teeth clenched around fur. Angel began frantically squeaking and even cried a bit.
Fine, don't eat. We'll just see how long that lasts.
Fluttershy dragged the bunny out of sight. The other 4 ponies walked into view. Dan glared at them.
What?
He asked gruffly. To Dan's surprise, the 4 began clapping their hooves together. Pinky likewise clapped her hands with a smile.
Thanks.
Dan said, rubbing the back of his head. Twilight looked up and looked to the side.
Spike, you're up.
Do I have to?
Spike whined.
Spike, give him a chance.
Twilight insisted. Spike walked over with a reluctant sounding,
Oh, alright.
The other 4 mares walked off again. Dan looked over Spike quizzically.
So are you some sort of lizard person, second-class citizen?
I'll have you know that I'm a fire-breathing dragon,
Spike stated. Dan perked up.
Fire breathing? Show me.
Spike narrowed his eyes, pointed his face upwards, and blew a sizable stream of green flame into the air. Dan paused.
That is awesome!
Spike looked back at Dan with a grin.
Sorry, Spike, was it? I think we got off on the wrong foot. Hoof.
I have feet.
Spike declared.
See, we're not so different. We both have feet, we both like fire.
Spike chuckled.
So, Dan, I hear you're taking care of our girl Pinky over there.
Yeah, she'd be pretty lost without me.
Dan said as he absent-mindedly examined his free hand. Pinky shot Dan an irritated glance.
Okay, that's true, but he doesn't have to be so brutally honest about it.
Well, on behalf of all of Equestria, I just want to say how much we appreciate it.
Dan waved a dismissive hand.
Yeah, enough about stupid, colorful horse world. Tell me about Spike. It's gotta be great to be able to set things on fire whenever you want.
Yeah, it is pretty great.
Spike's expression went serious.
But sometimes I set things on fire I don't mean to.
So do I!
Dan said as he excitedly motioned to himself.
We're like accidental arson bros.
Accidental arson, bros. I like it.
Spike made a fist and put it up to the mirror.
Put it there, bro.
Dan smiled knowingly and touched his side with his index finger.
Alright, tag up.
Twilight called out. Spike turned to her with a,
Huh? But you said give him a chance, Twilight.
Well, now I'm saying tag up.
Spike sighed and lowered his head.
Alright.
He looked back at Dan.
Catch you later, accidental arson, bro.
He said as he waved at the mirror. Dan waved as Twilight walked back into view. Twilight motioned her eyes with a hoof and sternly pointed the same hoof back at Dan.
What? I was being friendly.
Dan insisted.
Finding companionship and accidental fiery proper damage is not what I had in mind.
Twilight sighed.
Who's next?
You are.
Applejack informed.
Me?
Twilight put on a distressed look.
But I already went.
Applejack shrugged.
Well, we're fresh out of ponies. I'm not a pony.
Spike reminded helpfully.
Spike, I said no!
Twilight reminded.
Pinky,
Twilight called out.
please tell me you're done with the computer.
Pinky looked up, lower lip extended. She shook her head from side to side, sadly. Dan reached over towards the laptop.
Maybe I can help.
Pinky snatched the computer away and bit Dan's hand.
Youch! Why, you little troglodyte?
We would like a turn.
A regal voice said through the mirror. Dan turned to see two tall alicorns approach the mirror, Rainbow Dash trailing just a bit behind. Twilight's expression changed to equal amounts surprise and concern.
Princess Celestia and Princess Luna. I'm not sure if this...
Princess Celestia smiled down at Twilight.
It's okay, Twilight. Rainbow Dash informed me Dan was rather lively.
Twilight offered diplomatically.
lively. Maybe in the same sense as a giant explosion.
Aw,
Dan said.
you should have started with that, Sparkler. That was a nice compliment.
Twilight's eyes narrowed as she looked back at the mirror.
It wasn't intended as one.
Well, sometimes those are the best compliments of all.
Dan said informatively, raising his index finger. Twilight let out an exasperated sigh and lowered her face into a hoof. Celestia put a reassuring hoof on Twilight's shoulder. Twilight looked up at the taller alicorn.
Alright, just be careful.
Celestia smiled warmly.
Not to worry, Twilight.
Dan smiled wickedly.
So, Dan, was it? I'm Princess Celestia. Thank you for taking care of one of my dear, dear subjects.
Celestia said earnestly.
Princess, eh? So I take it there's a queen?
Oh, no.
Celestia said with a smile.
Princess is the highest title in Equestria. Queen is a title evil rulers tend to use around here.
What is this, a Disney film?
Dan asked. Celestia continued to smile.
I'm afraid I don't understand that reference.
Dan waved his hand dismissively.
Forget it.
He put back on a wicked, toothy grin.
So I take it you're in charge by divine virtue of being the tallest horse?
Celestia chuckled.
Oh my, no. Size is not how we determine social stature in our world, but I'm guessing from your surroundings it is in yours.
Celestia added mischievously. Dan uttered a surprised...
Wasn't expecting prim and proper tallest horse to put up a fight. Alright, tallest horse, you got some teeth, I'll give you that.
Why, thank you, Dan. I've worked hard to keep them strong for well over 1,000 years.
What are you, stupid? That's not...
You really should work on yours, if you don't mind me saying. You'll miss them when they're gone.
Celestia said with a concerned tone. Dan paused and tried to figure out if his dental hygiene was called into question again, or if he had just been threatened. Dan furrowed his brow.
Oh, you're good, princess,
he said, voice laced with venom.
Thank you, Dan.
Dan made a noise of frustration.
Meow.
Dan looked over to Mr. Mumbles, his paw extended towards him. Dan sighed and swatted the paw, lowering the mirror into a pillow and scooting over. Mr. Mumbles trotted over in front of the mirror.
Meow.
Celestia chuckled.
Oh my, no, it's quite real, I assure you.
Meow.
It shimmers with my magical...
Meow.
I assure you, it's not a magic wig.
Meow. Meow.
Celestia's smile dropped.
My subjects would treat me exactly the same if...
Meow. 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 Meow.
Celestia frowned.
Well, I can't help how long we alicorns.
Meow. Meow.
Celestia made an offended gasp.
I give my subjects all the freedom they need, and...
Meow.
Celestia's eyes went wide as she processed what she had just said.
But what I meant to say was...
A dark blue alicorn walked into view.
Tag up, sister?
Celestia joined the exasperated Psy Club, tapped her sister on the shoulder lightly, and walked off.
Meow.
Luna blinked.
I'm afraid I don't speak feline.
She doesn't have anything pleasant to say anyhow.
Celestia called out.
I heard that.
Celestia shouted.
But I would never do anything to poor Fluttershy.
Dan swore.
I mean, I just met you, so the jury's still out on if I'd set you on fire or not, but tell her I'm sorry for me, will ya?
Dan said uncharacteristically in an uncharacteristically repentant tone, especially since he was apologizing for his dream self. Fluttershy poked her head back into view.
It's okay, Dan. I forgive you.
She said, sweetly. Dan smiled back at her as she disappeared from view once more.
Well, I suppose it was unfair of me to treat you poorly for things a mere flawed aspect of you did to me.
So dreams, eh? That's pretty nifty, in a very Neil Gaiman sort of way.
I do not know who that is.
Luna admitted.
Human names all sound so exotic.
Pony names sound like a bunch of hippies created your world, or market execs trying to sell toys.
Dan commented. Luna bowed slightly.
Again, I am afraid I do not understand.
Dan sighed as he continued to speak.
Forget it. So, Princess Goth. Can I call you Princess Goth?
Luna frowned.
Apologies. Once again, I don't...
Dan interrupted.
A goth is someone who dresses in a lot of black, tends to obsess with the night, darkness, and the crow. It's something you might see a middle or high school student get into if the only chance they have of making friends is with other weirdos.
Well, I suppose it's oddly fitting then, as I am the Princess of the Night and am apparently very popular with young children.
You don't say.
Dan said flatly, not sure how he was going to elect an annoyed, offended, angry, or irritated response from the princess, or even get the conversation somewhere interesting. Princess Luna is one of the best holidays ever, Pinky informed, looking up from the laptop screen. Everyone dresses up in costumes and gets all the free candy they can eat, she said with a huge grin.
Wait, you get Halloween as a celebration just to you?
Dan asked in a surprised tone.
Yes, the wee ponies call it Nightmare Night.
Luna said. Dan raised an eyebrow.
Nightmare Night? I thought dreams were your thing.
Luna went uncomfortably silent. Yeah, Pinky began. Luna sort of had a dark period where she shrouded the land in eternal night and Princess Celestia had to banish her to the moon for 1,000 years. Dan tried to process what his roommate had just said to him.
That's the sort of stuff that happens in pastel-colored Ponyland? I thought you all just pranced around hugging each other, went to get facials, and blabbed non-stop about how great friendship is.
Dan said in a disgusted tone. Well, we do that too, Pinky admitted. That occasionally some dark force of evil will attack us and my friends and I will have to deal with it. Or some animal or swarm or giant beast will come by and completely destroy our village and we'll have to defeat it or lure it away somehow.
That sounds kinda cool, actually. Wait.
Dan turned back to the mirror.
Tallest horse banished you to the moon for 1,000 years? As in an entire millennium?
Dan asked in a shocked tone.
Mental note, buy or steal Mr. Mumbles a kitty's spacesuit.
She had no choice.
Luna insisted.
I had become possessed by my jealousy and forced unrelenting darkness upon the land.
That still sounds pretty draconian for something she could have talked over with you.
Dan disputed. No, Dan, she means literally. Pinky contended. She literally was possessed by a wicked spirit of nightmares that made her do those nasty things. Dan pondered this.
Oh, well, that's different, I suppose. How'd she get better then?
My friends and I defeated Nightmare Moon with the power of our friendship.
Lame!
And by that, I mean our magical elements of harmony all work together to blast her with magic and banish her from Princess Luna. Dan said, unsure of how to respond. Ooh, she came back though and gave us all wicked nightmares. She made it in so my dreams no pony thought I was funny. Can you believe it?
Well, actually...
And then she possessed Rarity, who turned all black and evil and stuff. We all had to go to the moon and fight her and her evil moon minions, who turned out to be the indigenous moon creatures who were also possessed by Nightmare's super evilness. But then Nightmare, Rarity, and our minions attacked Ponyville, so we had to go back there and defeat them all again with the help of the princesses and all of Ponyville.
Prissy turned evil and attacked your village with dark minions? And her, all your friends, and you have defeated evil monsters on numerous occasions?
Dan asked, having trouble imagining the same group he had traded barbs with before routinely found themselves in harm's way and saving each other and their friends. Yeah, pretty frequently actually, Pinky commented.
I once fought off cockatrices with a trident.
Spike called out from the side.
Wow, I didn't realize you were also metal.
Dan responded. We're not metal, Pinky responded. We're made of meat.
Never mind. Why didn't you ever tell me any of this?
Dan demanded. Pinkie Pie crawled into the fort, the glow from the TV washing Dan's body in a myriad of different colors as terrified screams emitted from the speakers. Zombies, eh? Pinky commented. Hey, did I ever tell you about the time changelings invaded Ponyville and took...
Pinky, I'm sure your frou-frou pony stories are very interesting from where you come from, but here we have zombie movies. And occasionally real zombies.
Pinky sighed. Never mind. Hey Dan, did I ever tell you about how my friends and I had to fight an ancient god of chaos and he...
Pinky, can this wait? I'm in the middle of a delicate procedure here. Dan
said, not looking up from the house he was constructing out of waffles and toothpicks. Fine. Hey Dan, there was this one time a mysterious crystal empire appeared and me and my friends had to defend it from an evil shadow prince.
No one cares, Pinky! No one!
Ah! Pinky's eye twitched a couple times. Must have slipped my mind, Pinky said with an irritated expression on her face.
Well, Dan, human, I'm afraid I must say farewell for now. I have royal duties to attend to, Luna said.
Like meeting with backstabbing advisors or whiny vassals?
Dan suggested.
Actually, my sister is in the final stages of lowering the sun. Soon I must raise the moon.
You two have to move heavenly bodies all on your own?
Dan asked, feeling everything he knew about physics suddenly being put on trial.
No one in your world has to move the sun or moon each day, or put the stars in the sky?
Life in prison, no chance at bail.
What? No, they do that on their own!
How convenient that must be,
Luna said, walking off. Dan went quiet, pondering on how he had certainly misjudged Pinky's friends, her world, and Pinky for that matter.
Maybe I should let her talk to me about Ponyland every once in a while, or at least for a few minutes.
Pinky began thrusting at keyboard keys with rigid arms and fingers, uttering frustrated "Yeez" with every stab.
Then again, maybe not.
Twilight, I'm not sure this is such a great idea.
Dan turned back to the mirror, hearing the first masculine voice of the day.
If you don't talk to him, then I'll have to talk to him again!
Twilight pushed a reluctant-looking orange Pegasus with a blue mane in front of the mirror.
You're my guard, so guard me!
Twilight quickly ran off to the side.
But...
Flash Sentry began, looking in the mirror and suddenly realizing he was being stared at.
Hey.
Wait, there actually are male ponies?
Dan asked in a surprised tone. Flash tried to figure out a response.
Well, yeah, I mean, where did you think we get baby ponies from?
I just figured you're all just spread like pink girly mold on bread.
Flash chuckled.
So, Mr. Guy Horseguard, why'd Sparkler toss you out into the ring?
Well,
Flash blushed slightly and trailed off. Ooh, that's Twilight's boyfriend, Pinky informed, glancing up for a split second. Flash chuckled nervously.
Dating your employer, eh? Scandalous. I'd tell you off if I actually cared about your bizarre equine society.
Flash smiled.
Well, Twilight sort of makes the rules, so it's not exactly like there's anyone to tell me off.
Sweet deal. Still, I'm surprised you can tolerate her.
What do you mean?
Flash asked, a little perturbed at the unkind wording Dan had chosen.
Well, you seem kinda not a giant nerd.
Oh, that.
Flash smiled.
Actually, I think it's cute.
Pinky uttered an "Aww." Dan raised an eyebrow.
Really? How many encyclopedias does she own?
Flash blinked a few times.
Like, volumes or full sets. Either way, I, sort of fell asleep last time she was telling me.
Pinky and Dan doubled over in laughter. Dan regained his composure enough to ask,
Seriously, is she the princess of the nerds over there?
in between giggles.
Well, she does still live at a library.
Flash informed. The volume of laughter coming from Dan and Pinky increased.
Tag up!
Twilight called out.
Did I say something wrong?
Flash asked.
No, everything is fine. Just fine!
Twilight insisted, putting a bit too much stress on just how fine things were.
I am 100% absolutely totally not mad at you or anything!
Twilight said, her words conveying that she meant exactly what she said, but her tone, facial expression, and body language saying otherwise.
Oh, no. I better go, guys.
Flash said, trudging away. Good luck! Pinky called out.
Call her Two Purple. It's her new favorite nickname.
Dan suggested. Flash chuckled.
And then I, the great and powerful Trixie, said, Fear not, weak and feeble ponies of Ponyville. I, Trixie, will return this foul and giant cosmic bear to the ever-free forest with my impressive and praiseworthy collection of great and powerful spells.
Now this is important.
Dan interjected.
How many electric guitars were you playing as you battled the multi-story bear monster?
20! All controlled by my magic as I met the Ursa Major on a field of battle. Other ponies cowered in fear, even Twilight Sparkle. Especially Twilight Sparkle.
Sweet,
Dan said. The mirror emitted blue and purple light as Trixie illustrated each new detail with her magic, even adding the guitars and music.
You know, I can watch this for hours.
Dan said. Trixie smiled.
Even if it's just one, I love a good audience. Especially one that doesn't question anything I say.
Trixie, who let you in here?
Twilight called out.
Trixie goes where Trixie wants!
Trixie shot back.
Sorry, Twilight. I thought we were just letting random ponies in after he took off with Flash.
Applejack admitted.
Flash isn't random!
Twilight complained.
Nor is the great and powerful Trixie!
Trixie protested.
Trixie, get out of my research area! Dan doesn't need to be corrupted further by the likes of you!
Twilight cried in a demanding tone.
You're going to let Princess Nerd push you around like that?
Dan asked.
I most certainly am not! Dan, don't encourage her!
Twilight said as she walked into view.
And Twilight, are you going to let Trixie get away with calling your house a dorky book repository for a geeky shut-in?
What?
Twilight exclaimed.
Hey, I didn't...
Trixie paused, glancing up at the ceiling and tapping her hoof against her chin.
Oh wait, I think I did say that during the prologue. Gah!
Twilight cried as she launched herself at Trixie, Twilight using her wings to add a little momentum, tackling the light blue unicorn to the floor and knocking off her hat. Trixie immediately fought back, smacking her hooves against the purple princess and grabbing a mouthful of feathers from Twilight's wing. The two wrestled and flailed against each other, trading insults.
Oh, why don't you just cast a spell to... Ouch! Make this go away, princess!
Trixie asked, adding an audible sneer at the word princess.
At least my spells aren't just useless, flashy nonsense! Nonsense! My spells entertain ponies all over Equestria!
Trixie said, dizzily.
With a little help from your lies, of course, ouch!
Twilight said as Trixie sunk her teeth into Twilight's foreleg. Pinky looked up, frustration slowly becoming the default expression as the hours of trying to get the computer to cooperate dragged on. Are Twilight and Trixie fighting?
Yeah,
Dan said, mesmerized by the tussle in front of him.
I could watch this for hours.
Pinky raised her pink crowbar as far above her head as the limited room in the fort would allow. She brought it down towards the computer, dwelling on how great it would be to be free of the wretched thing. It was not to be. Dan snagged the crowbar just above Pinky's grip and quickly wrestled it from her, accidentally smacking the back of the couch with it, the couch doubling as the back wall. The pillows and structure wobbled, and the two occupants paused until the structure settled. Dan chastised Pinky with a wag of his finger. Pinky whimpered quietly and went back to the laptop.
Oh my, everything all right over there, my dear?
A sophisticated-sounding male voice called out. Pinky merely grunted a reply as frustration re-emerged from every corner of her face.
Buck up, young filly, you'll get it,
the voice assured. Dan turned back to the mirror. A sophisticated white unicorn to match the voice was in view. Dan himself had changed into his Mr. Pennybags outfit, complete with monocle, mustachio, and top hat, the monocle and mustachio complementing the monocle and mustache of the unicorn on the other side of the mirror.
So, Dan, you were telling me about your ever-expanding real estate business,
Fancy Pants said to the dapper gentleman.
Ah, yes.
Dan said, donning his old money voice.
Well, the green and blue properties, of course, always bring the big money. Boardwalk, Park Place, etc.
Of course.
Fancy Pants replied with a nod, as if the sentence needn't explanation.
However, recently I've decided to diversify my investments. You can't go putting all your eggs in one basket, you know. One giant fire or thermonuclear explosion and it's all gone in a flash.
Dan paused to sip tea out of a chipped glass that was sitting atop a small chipped saucer.
Ah, yes, I remember when an associate of mine almost had his fortune ruined because of a parasprite infestation. Lucky the old boy was well insured, but the downtime required to get his business back in order played havoc with his finances.
Quite.
Dan responded.
That's why I've thought it best to purchase properties off-planet entirely.
Dan said, sipping more tea.
Off-planet, you say?
Fancy Pants responded, monocle nearly popping off his face.
Ah, yes. Tatooine, Cloud City, Coruscant.
Pinky began sniggering to herself.
We've even got hotels on Middle-earth.
Pinky began to fail, stifling her laughter.
Good show, Dan.
Yes, soon we hope to build property on Uranus.
Dan said, attempting to block his smile with his teacup. Pinky rolled over on the mattress, laughing so hard that tears began to form at her eyes.
The lady sure seems impressed.
Fancy Pants commented with a smile as he motioned out to Pinky. Pinky's eye twitched as she gritted her teeth in a rapid split-second movement. Came derisive laughter from the mirror, it resting on a pillow.
Discord, you really shouldn't laugh at others' frustration like that,
The soft voice said. Dan joined the laughter with a using one hand to point at Pinky and the other to hold his side. The soft voice became a little sterner.
Dan, you should know better than to pick on Pinky like that. She's trying the best she can.
Pinky erupted in a frustrated growl and pounced on Dan, interrupting his laughter as she knocked him to the mattress, straddled his chest, and finding his neck with her slender hands. The entire fort shook with the impact of the mattress, but the occupants were a little too preoccupied to notice at this point. Dan uttered several choking sounds as he struggled to get Pinky or her hands off of him. Discord's derisive laughter changed to full belly laughing as he fell to the floor, rolling and laughing at the scene in front of him.
Stop! You're killing me!
Discord said from the floor.
Oh my.
Fluttershy said, "Tag up, Dan, tag up!"
Meow.
Mr. Mumbles called a few feet away from the scene of violence. Dan frantically stuck out his hand. Mr. Mumbles swatted and trotted into view of the mirror with a
Meow.
Pinky calmed down enough to move her weight off Dan, grabbed the laptop, and turned, facing away from the mirror. Dan struggled to catch his breath and meekly crawled out of the fort. Discord composed himself enough to look at the mangy cat in the mirror and sighed.
Show's over, I guess.
He wandered off. Fluttershy followed him with her eyes.
Discord, you didn't...
Before she could finish, a disembodied eagle claw appeared and lifted one of her forehooves. A disembodied lion paw also appeared and gave her hoof a tap. With a smile, Fluttershy returned her focus to the mirror.
Meow.
Aw, who's a pretty kitty?
Fluttershy asked.
Meow.
Of course it's you. You're such a pretty kitty.
Meow.
Mr. Mumbles rolled onto her back and began purring.
Ah, who's a pretty kitty? Who's a pretty kitty?
Fluttershy glanced up to the pink mop of hair in her mirror.
Pinky, Mr. Mumbles requires belly rubs, please.
Busy! Pinky responded curtly without looking back.
Pinky, I can't give Mr. Mumbles the belly rubs she requires through the mirror.
Fluttershy replied with a small frown. I said I was busy! Pinky snapped, turning to level an angry glare at the mirror. Fluttershy gasped.
Too busy to scratch a fluffy kitty's belly? Pinky, I'm not sure I even know who you are anymore.
Pinky paused and contemplated this. She began to tear up. Oh my gosh, you're right, Fluttershy! Pinky stared down at Mr. Mumbles, who was still on her back, and gave her a quick, I've become everything I've ever hated! Pinky declared, collapsing into a fountain of tears, but still outstretching a hand to rub Mr. Mumbles' belly.
Oh, Pinky, don't cry. It's okay.
Fluttershy said.
It's not! I'm stupid and I can't figure out anything. Ah!
Pinky buried her face in her arm as the other continued to stroke Mr. Mumbles, desperately trying to grasp onto cat fur as if it were her very equanimity that she was holding on to. The rest of Pinky's friends gathered to the mirror with a concerned look on their faces. Pinky felt a warm hand on her shoulder. She glanced up to see Dan holding out a kitchen towel.
Tagga?
He asked softly. Pinky grabbed the towel, wiped her face with it, and blew her nose. Her eyes still puffy and her face still red, she whimpered a soft, "Uh-huh." Dan held out his hand, and Pinky gave it a swat. Still petting Mr. Mumbles, she scooted closer to the mirror. Mr. Mumbles stood up and swatted Pinky's hand, trotting out of the fort. Pinky collected herself as she collected the mirror and brought it up to her face.
So, what did you all think of Dan?
Pinky was bombarded with responses as all her friends spoke out at once.
He's a great barbarian snake.
Twilight, Rainbow Dash, Applejack, and Rarity all turned to face Fluttershy and Spike. In unison, the four asked,
Really? Yeah, he's awesome.
Spike responded.
Yeah, he's great.
Fluttershy repeated softly. Dan examined a slip of paper, trying to decipher Pinky's girly scrawl. Pinky obviously not have taken the same time to write the password down as she did when she wrote for her arts and crafts projects. Dan squinted and scratched at the stubble on his cheek.
Pinky,
He called out.
usually when someone says 3 when they're giving you a password, they mean the number 3.
Dan turned the piece of paper for Pinky to see. Pinky snatched it and examined it, a smile quickly reclaiming the previously lost territory of her face.
Tag up!
She said, setting the mirror down and holding her hand out. Dan smacked her hand and Pinky was back in front of the computer in an instant. Some excited typing and a hopeful, "Ooh!" later, Dan found Pinky on top of him again. This time it was Pinky's arms, not her hands that were around his neck, much to Dan's relief. Or maybe not. Slowly, Pinky released the death grip on her roommate's neck and sat up. She placed the mirror so her friends could view the computer screen.
Finally! Now can we finally begin our search for— Hey!
Twilight called out as Dan quickly typed something into the computer.
Dan, I don't think— Is that a cat playing the bagpipes?
Everyone gathered closer to the mirror as Scotland the Brave played out of the computer to a video of a cat bouncing up and down on bagpipes. Dan clicked a few items and suddenly another cat was added, blowing into the pipes.
It's more beautiful than I dared dream.
Fluttershy commented with wide eyes and wide pupils.
Yep,
Dan said.
and there are thousands more where those two came from.
Do they have dogs?
Applejack asked hopefully.
Or tortoises?
Rainbow Dash added excitedly.
They have every animal you can think of, and even a whole bunch of ones you didn't even know existed.
Dan responded.
Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh!
Dash responded, excitedly flapping her wings. The group eagerly began shouting requests as Pinky sat down next to her roommate with a content smile.
Alright, everypony. I raised the sun hours ago. You all should go get some sleep.
Celestia called out maternally, walking into the room. There was a series of disappointed groans from the 5 ponies and Baby Dragon.
Aww.
As they sat up, stretched, and made their way to the exit. Luna followed close behind and leaned in close to her sister.
Thanks for lowering the moon for me, sister. I lost track of time.
She admitted, embarrassed. Celestia smiled warmly at her younger sister.
Not to worry. You should go get some rest.
Luna smiled, nodded, and walked out. Celestia turned to the mirror.
Now, I think you two should also get some rest.
She said, assuming Dan and Pinky to be behind the mirror but in earshot. Suddenly, Celestia's eyes narrowed as Mr. Mumbles wandered into view.
Oh, it's you. What are you—
With a
Meow.
Mr. Mumbles tapped a few keys on the computer.
Is that a cat playing the bagpipes?
End of this chapter. Ah!
Ah! Ah!
Ah!
Ah! Ah!